What would happen if the internet disappeared for 1 week? Imagine waking up one morning and reaching for your phone out of pure habit. Not because something urgent has happened, but because your body has learned this movement so well that it happens before thought. You tap the screen, expecting light, motion, information. A familiar cascade of updates that quietly tells you the world is still running, but nothing appears. No notifications, no messages, no news headlines waiting to be refreshed. At first, this feels ordinary, almost harmless, like a weak signal or a temporary outage that will resolve itself if you wait long enough. You assume it is a technical inconvenience, something external and temporary, something that does not require your attention yet. Asterisk, you try again, and again. Minutes pass, then an hour. Slowly, an unfamiliar thought begins to form, not sharply, but gradually, like a shape emerging through fog. The internet is not slow, it is not malfunctioning, it is not under maintenance, it is simply gone. Not broken, not attacked, not explained. There is no official statement, no reassuring message, no status update, because there is nowhere for such a message to appear. Silence replaces certainty, and that silence feels heavier than noise ever did, because it offers no direction, no confirmation, no sense of what comes next. Asterisk, during the first day, confusion is stronger than fear. People restart routers, unplug cables, switch devices, move closer to windows, search for better reception, and assume the problem must be local. Some laugh it off, treating it as an inconvenience that will soon become a story to tell. Others feel irritation growing beneath the surface, a subtle frustration at being cut off from something they rely on without thinking about it. Shops remain open, traffic flows, electricity continues. On the surface, life still functions, but something invisible has vanished. Something people depended on constantly without realizing how deeply it shaped their habits, their schedules, their sense of connection, and even their perception of time. Asterisk, as the hours pass, conversations begin to change in small but noticeable ways. People look up more often. They speak instead of typing. They ask questions aloud instead of searching for instant answers. They rely on memory instead of verification. Many assume the connection will return soon because it always has before, and because modern systems have trained us to expect immediate repair. But by evening, unease begins to settle in. People start noticing how many small actions depended on the internet, confirming plans, checking directions, verifying information, filling empty moments while waiting. All of it now requires effort, patience, and the presence of other people, which feels unfamiliar in a world optimized for instant access. Asterisk, by the second and third days, the absence becomes practical rather than theoretical. Banks struggle not because money disappears, but because verification systems fail. Transactions slow, some stop entirely, not due to lack of resources, but due to lack of coordination. Supply chains hesitate, goods still exist and vehicles still run, but timing weakens without constant digital synchronization. Hospitals continue operating, yet accessing records becomes slower and more fragile. Paper returns. Human memory replaces automation. Offices feel unusually quiet as remote work collapses overnight. Emails no longer exist. Calendars no longer update themselves. Meetings only happen when people physically arrive, and absence becomes visible rather than hidden behind status indicators. Asterisk, news becomes local again. Information travels through radio broadcasts, printed notices, community meetings, and word of mouth. Rumors spread faster than facts, and correcting them takes time. Conflicting versions of events coexist longer than they used to. For the first time in years, the world feels fragmented, not because people are isolated, but because information no longer flows freely across invisible global networks. Knowledge feels heavier when it must be carried, remembered, and repeated, instead of streamed instantly from one place to another. Asterisk, as the days continue, something subtle but profound begins to change. Without constant updates, the sense of urgency fades. There are no breaking headlines, no endless alerts pulling attention from one emotional spike to another. Emotions level out, attention settles. Moments feel longer, not because time itself has slowed, but because nothing competes for awareness. Waiting becomes normal again. Waiting for answers, waiting for others, waiting without distraction. Patience, once treated as inefficiency, quietly returns as a necessity. People begin to notice how often they used to rush without knowing why. Asterisk, by the fourth and fifth days, human behavior shifts in ways that are difficult to reverse. Memory becomes valuable again. Without search engines, people rely on what they know and what others remember. Questions are asked out loud and discussed instead of answered silently by algorithms. Someone knows part of the answer, someone else recalls another part, and together they reconstruct information instead of retrieving it instantly. Mistakes happen, corrections take time, knowledge feels human again, imperfect, incomplete, but shared. Truth becomes something negotiated rather than delivered. Asterisk, people spend more time outside. They walk without headphones, sit longer in cafes, and speak without glancing at screens. Some feel anxious, uncomfortable with the silence that now surrounds them. Others feel something unexpected, relief. There is no invisible audience, no constant comparison, no pressure to respond immediately. Identity feels less performative and more internal. Without the need to document every moment, moments begin to feel complete on their own. Asterisk, by the 6th day, panic fades, not because the problem is solved, but because humans adapt, local systems emerge, communities organize, information is shared in person, schedules are written by hand, work changes its meaning, productivity slows, but intention sharpens. Tasks are completed one at a time instead of being fragmented across multiple channels. People realize how often they once worked without truly focusing, how attention was constantly divided. Now, attention stays longer, and the day feels shorter, not because less is done, but because the mind is no longer pulled in many directions at once. Asterisk, at night, darkness returns to rooms. Without screens, people go to sleep earlier, not because they are tired, but because nothing pulls them awake. Thoughts slow. Minds wander without algorithms guiding them from one stimulus to the next. Some find this uncomfortable, even unsettling. Others find it grounding. Silence becomes a presence rather than a void, something that fills space instead of exposing emptiness. Asterisk, by the 7th day, the world feels different, but not broken. Cities still stand, people still eat, relationships still exist, but attention has shifted. There is more eye contact, more pauses in conversation, more silence between moments. People notice how often they once reached for nothing, checked without purpose, filled empty space with noise. The internet's absence reveals something subtle. It did not simply connect devices, it shaped behavior, it compressed time, accelerated thought, flattened distance, and without it, the world regains depth. Asterisk, you can already sense how unusual this week would feel, not because life stops, but because it becomes less mediated. Without constant prompts telling people what to check, what to read, what to react to, attention begins to move inward. Thoughts stay longer, conversations do not rush toward conclusions. Even uncertainty feels different, not as a problem to solve immediately, but as a condition to sit with for a while. The absence of instant answers slowly teaches something modern life rarely allows. That not knowing is not always uncomfortable, and silence does not always need to be filled. Asterisk, when the internet eventually returns, as it inevitably would, systems recover quickly. Messages flood in, updates resume, the familiar noise returns, yet something quieter may linger, a memory of slower days, of uninterrupted conversations, of attention that was not constantly divided. And perhaps one question remains, not whether we could live without the internet, but how much of ourselves we might choose to keep offline, even when the connection comes back.